The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched higher than any cathedral on Earth. 17 species sat in their designated seats, each representing civilizations that had survived for millions of years. Captain stood in the center of the floor, feeling very small and very human. Beside him, Diplomat held a data pad containing humanity's petition for council membership. Her hands were steady, but could see the tension in her shoulders. They had prepared for this moment for 3 years. The petition is amusing, council speaker said. His voice came through the translation device as smooth and cold. The leader's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. A gesture had learned meant dismissal. Humanity wishes to join the Galactic Council after only 2 centuries in space. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some sounded like laughter, others sounded worse. Stepped forward. We understand we are young compared to the honored members of this council, but humanity has much to offer. We have explored 47 star systems. We have established peaceful contact with 6 species. We have technology, culture, and a desire to contribute to galactic civilization. Technology, an engineer's voice boomed. Your ships use fusion drives. We abandoned those 4 million years ago. Culture, a biological specialist's tentacles waved in what recognized as contempt. You have not even unified your own societies. Felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his face calm. They had expected this. Every simulation, every preparation session had predicted exactly this response. Raised one long finger. The chamber fell silent. Let me explain something to you, humans. The Council is not a charity. Every species here has earned their place through excellence. They possess computational abilities that can predict stellar movements 1,000 years in advance. They can engineer structures that last for eons. They can redesign living organisms at the molecular level. He leaned forward in his seat. Each species has one great strength, one ability that no other can match. This is the law of evolution and survival. Specialization leads to perfection. And what is humanity's great strength? Another council member asked. The being's name was unpronounceable to human tongues, so the translation simply said Delegate 7. Opened her mouth, then closed it. Saw her searching for an answer. They had discussed this question 100 times, but standing here in this ancient chamber, every answer seemed inadequate. We are adaptable, said finally. Humans can learn, we can change, we can survive in different environments. So can bacteria, replied. More laughter echoed through the chamber. His jaw tightened. Behind him, he heard a door open. Commander strode into the chamber, his military uniform sharp and formal. He wasn't supposed to be here. This was a diplomatic mission. Council Speaker said, his voice hard. Perhaps Earth should withdraw this petition. Commander hissed, what are you doing? Ignored her. He walked to stand beside and facing the council directly. My government sent diplomats because we believe in peace, but I came to deliver a warning. Dismissing humanity is a mistake you will regret. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in 17 different languages. His face remained calm, but his eyes showed something new. Interest maybe, or anger. A threat, asked quietly, how primitive? Not a threat, said. A fact. Humanity doesn't know when to quit. We don't know when something is impossible. We look at walls and see doors. We look at limits and see suggestions. Whatever test you give us, we will find a way through it. Bold words, said. Very well, let us make this interesting. He gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. Humanity believes they belong among the great species of the galaxy. Then prove it. Show us your limit. Show us the one thing humanity can do that no other species can match. The display showed a timer. 1 year galactic standard. You have 1 year to demonstrate your exceptional ability. Return here with proof of your greatness. If you succeed, we will grant full council membership. If you fail, smile was not kind. You will be quarantined to your home system, permanently. No trade, no contact, no future among the stars. The chamber fell silent, felt his heart pounding. A year was nothing. How could they discover or prove something in just 1 year that would satisfy species millions of years old? His face had gone pale. Council speaker, that's generous, interrupted. I think so. Some delegates wanted to reject your petition immediately. I convinced them to give you this chance. Do not waste it. His expression hadn't changed. He gave a sharp nod. We accept. Commander turned to him. You can't make that decision. I just did, said. Then he looked at, 1 year, we'll be back, and you'll wish you had just accepted our petition today. Waved a hand in dismissal. We shall see. Humans are dismissed. They walked out of the chamber in silence. The doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. Only when they reached their ship did finally explode. What were you thinking? She demanded. You just gambled humanity's entire future on what pride? No, said calmly. On truth, they asked what makes us special. I told them we don't quit. Now we have to prove it. Rubbed his face. And how do we do that? What's our great ability? What makes humans exceptional? I don't know, admitted, but we have 1 year to find out. The ship lifted off from the council station. Through the viewport, could see the massive structure shrinking behind them. Somewhere in there, 17 species were probably laughing at the foolish humans who had accepted an impossible challenge. Maybe they were right to laugh. Maybe humanity was nothing special. Maybe they were just average in every way that mattered. But as the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading back to Earth, found himself thinking about its words. Humans don't quit. They never had. Not when the first humans walked out of Africa. Not when they reached the moon. Not when they built the first starship with technology they barely understood. Maybe that was enough. Maybe refusing to quit was its own kind of strength. Or maybe they were all doomed, and would spend the rest of human history trapped in their own solar system, forever wondering what could have been. 1 year to find out. The countdown had begun. Director hadn't slept properly in 3 weeks. Dark circles shadowed her eyes as she stared at the latest reports scrolling across her screen. Around her, the Human Coalition Research Division worked day and night, searching for an answer that seemed impossible to find. What made humanity special? Every test came back the same way. Humans were average strength compared to other species, average intelligence, average everything. There was nothing that stood out, nothing exceptional, nothing worthy of the Galactic Council's standards. Another dead end, muttered, closing the file. She looked around the massive research facility. Hundreds of scientists worked at their stations, each one searching for humanity's great strength. They had been at it for 6 months now. Half their time was already gone. A knock on her office door made her look up. Engineer Yang stood there, holding a tablet. His usual cheerful expression was missing. Director, I think we're asking the wrong question, he said. Gestured for him to sit. Explain. Yang pulled up data on his tablet. Look at the council species. They have massive brains that work like supercomputers. They have 6 arms and can manipulate matter at the atomic level. They can literally rewrite DNA with their minds. Each one evolved to do one thing perfectly. We know this, said tiredly. That's why we're stuck. We didn't evolve to do anything perfectly. Exactly, Yang said, suddenly excited. We didn't specialize. Every other species in the galaxy picked one path and followed it for millions of years. But humans, we do a little bit of everything. We're not the best at anything, but we're decent at lots of things. Frowned. Being decent doesn't win council membership. Maybe not, Yang admitted. But think about it. They are amazing at calculations, but terrible at anything creative. They build incredible things, but can't adapt their designs. Every species has a weakness because they focused so much on their strength. Humans don't have that problem. Before could respond, her door burst open again. Biologist Sara rushed in out of breath. Director, I found something in the historical records, something about human endurance." She pulled up a file showing humanity's history on Earth. "Look at this. Humans survived ice ages, survived plagues, survived wars that should have ended civilization, and every time they came back stronger. Other species would have gone extinct. Humans just kept going." Strategist Jinwoo appeared behind Sora. "She's right. I've been studying human military history. We lose more battles than we win, but we never stop fighting. We analyze what went wrong, change our approach, and try again. The council species don't think like that. When their perfect solution fails, they're stuck. Humans just find another way." Felt something stirring in her mind, a pattern forming from all these pieces. "Keep talking." "Humans are stubborn," Jinwoo continued. "Stupidly stubborn. We set goals that are impossible and then work for generations to achieve them. We said we'd go to the moon and did it with computers less powerful than a modern watch. We said we'd reach the stars and built ships that probably shouldn't work. We don't know when to quit." The door opened one more time. Historian walked in, carrying an old paper book. "I've been reading everything I could find about human achievement. I think I understand what makes us different." "Tell me," said. She could feel the answer getting closer. Open the book to a marked page. Listen to this quote from an old Earth philosopher. "Man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems. Humans spend more energy worrying about limits than accepting them. Every time someone says something is impossible, a human immediately tries to prove them wrong." "That's just stubbornness," said. "No," insisted. "It's more than that. It's a fundamental rejection of the idea of limits. The reached their computational peak and stopped evolving. The perfected their engineering and considered themselves complete. Every council species found their limit and accepted it. Humans never do that. We hit a wall and immediately start looking for a door, a window, or a sledgehammer." Stood up and walked to her window. Outside, she could see Earth spinning below the orbital station. That small blue world had produced something unique. Not the strongest species, not the fastest or toughest, just the most stubborn. "We don't have one limit," she said slowly. "We have none because we refuse to accept them." The room fell silent. Yang, Sora, Jinwoo, and all stared at her. "That's it," Yang whispered. "That's humanity's strength. We're the only species that looks at impossible and says, 'Not yet.'" Sora nodded. "The council asked for our limit, but limits are exactly what humans don't do." Jinwoo was already pulling up tactical data. "We need to prove this. We need to show them in a way they can't deny." Turned back to her team. For the first time in months, she felt hope. "Get me captain and commander, and find mathematician and doctor. If we're going to prove humanity's strength, we need to challenge the council species at their own game." "Challenge them?" asked. "But we're not better than them at anything." "Exactly," said with a smile. "We're not better, but we're close enough, and that's going to terrify them." Over the next 3 months, S team worked harder than they ever had before. They didn't try to find one perfect ability. Instead, they prepared to demonstrate something the council had never seen, a species that refused to be limited by anything. Worked on mathematical problems that would challenge the Yang designed engineering projects to compete with the developed medical procedures to rival the None of them expected to win. That wasn't the point. The point was to show that humans could get close, in every field, without specializing in any of them. When the research was complete, presented her findings to Earth's government. The room was full of leaders, scientists, and military officers. Everyone wanted to know if humanity had found its answer. "We did," told them. "Humanity's great strength is that we don't have one. We refuse to be defined by limits. We refuse to specialize. We refuse to stop improving. Every other species in the galaxy reached their peak and stopped climbing. Humans never stop climbing." Commander leaned forward. "Will the council accept that?" "I don't know," admitted. But it's the truth, and if we're going to represent humanity, we should do it honestly. Captain stood up. Then we tell them, we show them, and we let them decide if that's enough. 3 months later, the human ships approached the council station again, stood on the bridge of his vessel, watching the massive structure grow larger on the beside him, reviewed the presentation one last time. Are we ready? She asked quietly. Thought about's research, about's mathematical proofs, about Yang's designs, about's medical innovations, about humanity's long history of refusing to accept the word impossible. Yes, he said, we're ready. The countdown was over, time to deliver humanity's answer. The council chamber looked exactly as it had 1 year ago. 17 species sat in their ancient seats, waiting to judge humanity. Captain walked to the center of the floor again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood Yang and a dozen other humans representing Earth's best minds. Council speaker studied them with his 4 cold eyes. 1 year has passed. Have you discovered your great ability, humans? We have, said, his voice echoed in the vast chamber. But we won't just tell you about it, we want to show you. Murmurs rippled through the council, tilted his head. Show us how. Stepped forward, her diplomatic training keeping her voice steady. We propose a demonstration. We will challenge each council member species in their area of expertise. If we can prove humanity's strength through direct competition, there can be no doubt. The chamber exploded with noise. Delegates shouted, laughed, and argued. The idea of humans challenging masters in their own fields was absurd. Silence, commanded. The noise died. He looked at the human delegation with something that might have been curiosity. You wish to challenge thee in computation, thee in engineering, thee in biological science. Yes, said simply. And you expect to win. A delegate's voice was full of mockery. No, admitted. We expect to lose, but we expect to lose by much less than you think possible. Was silent for a long moment. Then he made a gesture that the translation device interpreted as a smile. Very well. This will be educational. Let the challenges begin. The first challenge was against the mathematician stood across from Prime, the greatest computational mind in the galaxy. A holographic display showed a complex mathematical problem, something about predicting the gravitational interactions of a 1,000-body system over 10,000 years. This is foolish, Prime said. His massive head pulsed with neural activity. I can solve this in seconds. A human brain cannot possibly compete. Then you have nothing to fear, replied calmly. The timer started. Prime's eyes went distant as his brain worked at speeds no human could match. Pulled out a data pad and began entering calculations, his fingers moving quickly across the interface. He used shortcuts, approximations, and clever tricks to bypass the hardest parts of the problem. 60 seconds later, Prime announced his answer. The display showed it was perfect, accurate to 17 decimal places. 70 seconds later, finished. His answer appeared on the display. It was wrong by a tiny fraction, accurate to only 15 decimal places. The chamber was silent, had lost, but he had lost by only 3 seconds and 2 decimal places, against a being whose brain was literally designed for computation. Impossible, Prime whispered. Your brain is primitive. You should have taken hours to solve this if you could solve it at all. I used different methods, explained. I didn't try to calculate everything perfectly. I found shortcuts and accepted small errors. It's not as good as your solution, but it's close enough. The next challenge was engineering. Yang faced a master builder. They were given identical materials and asked to construct a bridge across a holographic chasm. The bridge needed to support maximum weight while using minimum material. The 6 arms moved in perfect coordination, manipulating matter at the molecular level. The bridge took shape in minutes, a perfect structure of elegant efficiency. Yang worked with simple tools and his two human hands. His bridge was messier, less elegant. It used slightly more material and probably wouldn't last as long. But when the testing began, his bridge held 98% as much weight as this masterpiece. How? The demanded. Your structure is flawed, the stress distribution is uneven, it shouldn't work this well. I know it's flawed, Yang said, but I made the flaws work for me instead of against me. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. The challenges continued. Doctor competed against the inn designing a treatment for a genetic disorder. Her solution was slower and less elegant, but it worked 95% as well as this biological manipulation. Challenge after challenge, the pattern repeated. Humans lost, but they lost by margins so small they seemed impossible. Every time, they came within a few percentage points of beings who had spent millions of years perfecting single abilities. Finally, after the last challenge ended, council speaker stood. The chamber fell silent. I do not understand, he said slowly. Humanity is not specialized. Your brains are not designed for computation. Your bodies are not built for precision engineering. Your biology is not adapted for cellular manipulation. Yet you compete with masters in every field. How? Captain walked to the center of the chamber. This was the moment. Everything depended on what he said next. You asked us to show you our limit, he began. To prove what humanity can do that no other species can match. The answer is simple. We refuse to have limits. They are perfect at computation, but they can't do anything else well. They are master engineers, but they can't adapt their designs. They are biological artists, but they're helpless with technology. He gestured to his team. Is not a computer, but he thinks like one when he needs to. Yang is not a molecular engineer, but he understands structures well enough to compete with one. Cannot rewrite DNA with her mind, but she studies and learns and finds other ways to achieve the same result. Every species here reached their peak and stopped climbing, continued. You found what you were best at and decided that was enough. Humans never stop climbing. We look at your achievements and say, we can learn to do that too. Maybe not as well, maybe never perfectly, but close enough to make it work. Joined him. You wanted to know humanity's exceptional ability. It's this. We're exceptionally stubborn. We see walls and refuse to accept them. We see limits and refuse to believe them. You've each spent millions of years becoming perfect at one thing. We've spent our entire history becoming decent at everything. The chamber was completely silent now. 17 species stared at the humans, and for the first time they looked uncertain. We're not asking you to believe we're better than you, said quietly. We're not. What we're asking you to understand is that we'll never stop trying to be. That's what makes humanity special. Not our strength, but our refusal to accept weakness. Not our intelligence, but our refusal to accept ignorance. Not our abilities, but our refusal to accept inability. Commander had been watching from the back of the chamber. Now he walked forward to stand with the human delegation. 1 year ago, I told you that dismissing humanity was a mistake. Now you see why. We don't have your advantages. We don't have millions of years of specialized evolution. What we have is this. We don't quit. We don't stop. We don't accept that anything is impossible. Slowly returned to his seat. He looked at his fellow council members. Conversations happened in languages and methods humans couldn't understand. The debate went on for what felt like hours. Finally spoke, the council will consider your demonstration. We must deliberate on what we have witnessed. Return to your ships. We will summon you when a decision is reached. As the human delegation left the chamber, felt exhausted but oddly hopeful. They had shown the council exactly what humanity was. Whether it was enough remained to be seen. But they had done something that no other species applying for council membership had ever done. They had competed with masters and come close to winning, not through specialized evolution or perfect adaptation, but through sheer stubborn determination to be good at everything. Now they could only wait and see if that was enough. The human ships had been waiting in orbit around the Council station for 3 days when the emergency broadcast came through. Captain was reviewing supply reports when every screen in the fleet suddenly switched to show Council speaker. The leader looked different, frightened. All Council delegates and allied vessels, his voice shook slightly. We have a catastrophic situation. The quarantine around System 779 has failed. The Void Plague has escaped. Felt his blood go cold. Even humans had heard stories about the Void Plague, an ancient weapon created by a species long extinct, designed to destroy any civilization that tried to study it. A swarm of self-evolving nanomachines that could adapt to any defense, learn from any attack, and spread faster than anything else in the known galaxy. How many systems are affected? Someone asked over the broadcast. 17 worlds have gone dark in the last week, replied. The plague adapts to everything we try. Predictive models fail because it evolves faster than we can calculate. Containment structures are consumed and turned into more plague. Biological weapons are analyzed and absorbed within hours. The transmission showed images from the infected worlds. Cities dissolved into gray dust. Ships breaking apart in orbit. Entire planets being consumed by clouds of microscopic machines that learned and adapted with every passing moment. Every species is trying their best solution, continued, and every solution fails. The plague was designed to defeat any single approach. We are requesting all allied forces to evacuate the affected regions. There is nothing more we can. Wait, interrupted the broadcast. Council speaker, humanity requests permission to assist. The council chamber appeared on screen. 17 species turned to look at the human transmission. 4 eyes blinked in confusion. Captain, humanity has no experience with threats of this magnitude. Your technology is primitive compared to. Our technology is average, corrected. But maybe that's what you need right now. You said every specialized solution fails. What if you need an unspecialized solution? Before could respond, Commander's face appeared on another screen. Council speaker, I'm mobilizing an emergency task force. We'll need access to all your data on the plague, cooperation from your best specialists, and authorization to coordinate defense efforts across all affected systems. Humans cannot possibly, a delegate began. Probably not, agreed. But you're definitely failing right now. What do you have to lose by letting us try? The council chamber erupted in argument. Some species wanted to accept human help. Others insisted it would be a waste of time. But as another report came in showing 2 more worlds going silent, made his decision. Very well, he said. Humanity is authorized to coordinate defense efforts. All council resources are at your disposal. Do not make us regret this. Within hours, Commander had assembled a team on the largest human ship. Director arrived with all her research data. Strategist Jinwoo brought tactical analysis of the plague's movements. Biologist Sora had studied every known detail about the nanomachine structure. Engineer Yang prepared containment designs. Diplomat opened communication channels with every council species. The command center was chaos. Screens showed spreading infection across multiple star systems. Mathematicians shouted calculations. Engineers argued about construction priorities. Biologists suggested organism designs. And in the middle of it all, humans tried to coordinate everything. This isn't working, said, staring at the data. Every time we try a solution, the plague adapts. The predicted its movement patterns, so we set up a blockade. The plague changed direction. The built a containment field. The plague learned to eat the field generators. The created a virus to attack it. The plague absorbed the virus and became stronger. That's because you're all using your specialties, Jinwoo said, studying tactical maps. The plague was designed to beat any perfect solution. It can't be out-calculated, out-engineered, or out-evolved, not by one approach. Leaned over the command table. Then we don't use one approach, We use all of them at the same time, constantly changing. That's insane, a mathematician said. Coordinating multiple strategies without a unified plan will create chaos. Yes, agreed. But the plague can't adapt to chaos. It needs patterns to learn from. If we keep changing our methods, it won't have time to figure out what we're doing. Sora pulled up biological data. The plague's adaptation speed is incredible, but it still needs time to analyze threats. If we hit it with calculations, then immediately switch to engineering, then switch again to biology before it finishes adapting to any single method. It gets confused, Yang finished. Like trying to solve 17 different puzzles that keep changing into different puzzles. Was already opening communication channels. I can coordinate with each council species. We'll need them to trust human leadership, which won't be easy. Make them understand, said. We're not leading because we're better. We're leading because we're the only ones who aren't married to a single approach. The first test came at System 803. The plague had consumed half the system's asteroid belt and was heading toward an inhabited world. Task Force arrived with ships from 6 different council species. Team, I need predictive calculations on the plague's next movement, commanded. But only for the next 10 minutes. After that, switch to calculating optimal evacuation routes. 10 minutes isn't enough time for accurate, the commander began. I don't need accurate, interrupted. I need fast, go. While the work turned to the start building a containment field but make it deliberately flawed. Add weak points in sectors 7 and 13. Deliberately flawed, the sounded horrified. That violates every engineering principle. Do it anyway. To the create a biological agent that looks like a weapon, but is actually just noise. Make it interesting enough that the plague will want to analyze it. The coordinated attack happened in waves. The predictions guided ships to herding positions. The plague moved toward the containment field, detecting the weak points and pushing through them, exactly as wanted. The moment it began adapting to the field, Yang detonated the whole thing, creating a debris cloud. Before the plague could process what happened, they released their biological decoy. The plague paused, trying to analyze the biological agent. In those crucial seconds, human ships equipped with simple kinetic weapons, technology so primitive the plague hadn't even considered it, fired into the swarm's densest sections. The plague lost cohesion for the first time since escaping quarantine. It's working, shouted from the command center. The plague's adaptation is lagging. It can't keep up with the changes. Don't celebrate yet, warned. It's learning. We need to stay ahead of it. For 6 weeks, the task force fought the void plague across 12 star systems. Every battle was different. They used math to set traps, then abandoned the traps before the plague adapted. They built structures designed to fail at specific moments. They released organisms that did nothing except waste the plague's processing power trying to understand them. They used human tactics too, ancient, simple, supposedly obsolete methods that the plague barely registered as threats until it was too late. Chemical explosives, electromagnetic pulses, even physical ramming when necessary. The key was never using the same combination twice, never giving the plague time to understand the pattern. But the plague was learning. Slowly, it began to adapt to the chaos itself. It started predicting pattern changes. It evolved redundancies that survived multiple attack methods. The swarm that had been scattered was consolidating again. We're losing the advantage, Jinwoo reported. The plague is adapting to our adaptation. In another week, it'll be immune to everything we've tried. Studied the tactical displays. The plague was heading toward the Council's core worlds now, stronger than ever. They had slowed it down, maybe bought some time, but it wasn't enough. We need something it can't adapt to, said. Something that doesn't follow any pattern at all. Looked up from his calculations. What if we don't try to destroy it? What if we confuse it into shutting down? Everyone turned to look at him. "Explain," ordered. "The plague adapts by analyzing threats," said, his voice getting excited. "But what if we feed it every analysis method at once? Calculations, engineering data, biological information, all 17 council species approaches simultaneously, not as attacks but as pure information. It would try to process everything at once and—" "Overload," Yang finished. "Like feeding a computer too much data too fast." "It might work," Sora said, "but we'd need perfect coordination from every council species, all sharing data at exactly the same time. One unified transmission into the plague's processing center." Was already composing messages to the council. "I'll make it happen." Looked at his team, at the humans who had refused to quit even when facing an impossible threat, at the council members who had learned to trust these strange, stubborn creatures from a young world. "Do it," he ordered. "Set up the transmission." The transmission array was the largest structure humanity had ever built. In just 4 days, with help from engineers and calculations, the human-led team assembled it in orbit above the council's primary station. It looked like a massive satellite dish, but instead of receiving signals, it would broadcast every piece of knowledge the galaxy possessed directly into the heart of the Void Plague. Captain stood in the command center, watching the final preparations. Around him, representatives from all 17 council species worked at their stations. A month ago, they had laughed at humanity's petition for membership. Now they were trusting humans to save the galaxy. "All species are ready to transmit," reported. She had spent days convincing each council member to share their most advanced knowledge. It went against every instinct they had, but the alternative was extinction. "Computational data is loaded," confirmed from his station. The mathematician had been working with specialists to compile centuries of their most complex calculations. "Engineering specifications are ready," Yang added. He had organized their entire database of molecular construction techniques. "Biological research is prepared," Sora said. They had been reluctant to share their genetic manipulation secrets, but Sora had convinced them this was the only way. Commander studied the tactical display. The Void Plague was 3 days from the councils. They had one chance to stop it. If this failed, evacuation was the only option, and even that might not be enough. "Director's status report," ordered. Looked up from her console, her tired eyes showing determination. "The transmission is ready. When we activate it, we'll send 17 different species complete knowledge bases directly at the plague's processing center. It won't be an attack. It'll be information. Pure, overwhelming, contradictory information." "And if it doesn't shut down the plague?" a delegate asked nervously. "Then we gave it every piece of knowledge we have," replied, "and probably made it unstoppable." The command center fell silent. Everyone understood the risk. They were gambling the entire galaxy on a theory. Looked at each member of his team, at who had competed with computational masters, at Yang, who had challenged engineering perfection, at who had matched biological artists, at Jinwoo, whose strategies had kept them alive this long, at Sora, whose understanding of the plague made this plan possible, at whose diplomacy united 17 different species, at whose research had shown humanity's true strength. "This is what we do," said quietly. "Humans don't quit, even when the odds are impossible, even when we're outmatched. We find a way or we make one. Today, we show the galaxy what that really means." He turned to the council delegates. "Every species here has one great strength, one perfect ability, but the plague was designed to defeat perfection. It can't be outcalculated, out-engineered, or out-evolved by any single approach. So today we use every approach, not perfectly, but together. That's what humans bring to this galaxy, not perfection, unity in imperfection." Council speaker, who had been observing from his station, stood up. "Commander, 1 month ago I asked humanity to prove their worth, to show us what makes you special. I understand now. You are not special because of what you can do. You are special because you refuse to accept what you cannot do. Transmission ready in 60 seconds, announced. The command center's main screen showed the void plague approaching. Billions of nanomachines working together, learning, adapting, consuming. An unstoppable force created by a dead civilization to destroy any future one. 30 seconds. Thought about Earth, about humanity's long journey from that small blue world to standing here, coordinating the galaxy's defense. They had been dismissed as primitives, as beings with no special traits, as unworthy of the Council. 10 seconds. But humanity had proven something more important than special abilities. They had proven that limits were negotiable, that impossible was just a suggestion, that being decent at everything was better than being perfect at one thing. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, transmitting. The array activated. Energy surged through its systems as it broadcast toward the plague. But this wasn't a weapon. It was pure information. Mathematics, engineering, biology, and 14 other species' complete knowledge, all transmitted simultaneously. The plague swarm formation wavered. Its perfect coordination faltered. The nanomachines tried to process what they were receiving. Computational data that contradicted engineering principles. Engineering solutions that violated biological rules. Biological organisms that mathematical laws. 17 different ways of understanding reality, all accurate but completely incompatible, flooding into the plague's collective consciousness at once. "It's working," shouted. "The plague's processing is slowing down. It's trying to analyze everything at once." "Increase transmission power," ordered. "Hit it with everything we have." The array's output doubled. More data, more contradictions, more impossible choices for an intelligence designed to find the single perfect adaptation to any threat. The void plague stopped moving. Its swarm hung in space, paralyzed by information overload. Trillions of nanomachines trying to process 17 different solutions to problems that had no single answer. "Its neural network is fragmenting," reported. "The plague is designed to find patterns and adapt, but there's no pattern in what we're sending, just chaos." "Beautiful, stupid chaos," Yang added with a grin. For 10 minutes the transmission continued. The plague swarms broke apart, reformed, broke apart again. It tried to adapt, tried to find the pattern, tried to calculate the optimal response. But optimal didn't exist when every piece of information contradicted every other piece. Finally, the plague went dormant. Its nanomachine stopped trying to process the flood of data and simply shut down, floating in space like dead metal. The command center erupted in cheers. Delegates from 17 species celebrated together. Humans hugged, shook hands with. Species that had barely acknowledged each other's existence were united in victory. Allowed himself a small smile. "Confirm the plague is inactive. I want monitoring stations around all dormant sections, if even one nanomachine reactivates." "We'll handle it," Jinwoo assured him. "We know how now." 3 days later, Captain stood once again in the Grand Council chamber. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. The delegates looked at the human delegation with respect, even gratitude. Council Speaker rose from his seat. "Captain, Commander, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally apologize for our initial dismissal of humanity. We asked you to prove your worth. You saved us instead." "We didn't save you alone," replied. "We couldn't have. They provided the calculations, they built the array, they contributed their research. Every council species made this victory possible." "Yes," agreed. "But only humans could coordinate it. Only your species thinks the way you do, willing to use any method, accept any imperfection, try any approach. The plague defeated us because we each insisted on our perfect solution. You defeated it by accepting that perfect solutions don't exist." He gestured and the council seal appeared in hologram above the chamber floor. The Galactic Council votes unanimously to grant humanity full membership. But more than that, we ask humanity to help us change. For millions of years, we have each followed our single path. Perhaps it is time to learn from your example, to embrace imperfection, to refuse limits. Felt emotion rising in his chest. They had done it, not by being the strongest or most advanced, but by being stubborn enough to try anyway. We accept, said, and we promise you this, humanity will never stop trying to improve. We'll learn from your strengths. We'll share our methods. Together, maybe we can all become something better than we are alone. As the formal ceremony began, leaned close to and whispered, "We actually did it. Against impossible odds, we convinced the galaxy that being decent at everything beats being perfect at one thing." Not just convinced them, replied, watching the council delegates work together in ways they never had before. We showed them. Humans don't just refuse limits for ourselves. We help others see that their limits aren't real either. Commander joined them as the ceremony concluded. "What now?" he asked. Now looked at his team, at the friends who had worked impossible hours, solved unsolvable problems, and refused to quit when every logical assessment said they should. Now we keep going. There's a whole galaxy out there full of problems that seem impossible. We're humans. Impossible is what we do. Later, as the human fleet prepared to depart Council space, stood on the bridge of her ship looking at the stars. So many worlds, so many challenges, so many things that other species would call impossible. Director smiled, perfect. Yang joined her at the viewport. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about what we proved," she replied. "The Council asked for our limit. We told them we don't have one. They asked what makes us special. We showed them it's not what we can do, but what we refuse to stop trying to do." "And now?" Yang asked. "Now we live up to it," said. "Every day, every challenge, every time someone says something can't be done. We're humans, we don't quit, we don't stop, we don't accept limitations, not on ourselves and not on what's possible." The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying humanity's message into the galaxy. A message written not in words but in actions, not in claims but in proof. You asked for our limits. We don't have them. We are human. We don't stop at walls. We don't stop at borders. We don't stop at impossible. We keep going until the job is done, until the problem is solved, until we've proven once again that limits are just suggestions waiting to be broken. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not perfection, but persistence. Not strength, but stubbornness. Not the ability to do everything perfectly, but the refusal to stop trying. And somewhere in the cosmos the message echoed, "You asked for our limits. Now you see them, we have none. And we'll prove it one impossible challenge at a time."